now that I've got microphone
I
hair.
know. Well, you look fetching
Head
today, so it shouldn't.
headset hair. I'm very bright blue today.
How's your day been so far?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, amazing. So good. So productive, but it's been a lot. It's a very very full time, but it's full of so many good things.
You've been
So,
so busy lately. I've seen your
oh
activity
my
on LinkedIn. It's
oh
like you're doing a lot
goodness.
of speaking. You're doing a lot of events.
You got it. Yeah. All out and about, and but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Usually when I do my best work is when I've got way too much on my plate.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm a lot more productive.
You just can't.
You
You don't
somehow.
have time to. You have no time to waste. You just keep going, and things just seem to
You
keep
and
moving
you
along.
have to manage. You
You
have to
have to.
manage your time.
So I'm doing, as I mentioned in the intro, this is Andrea Butcher. She's the president of HRD Advisory Group, the host of another really fine podcast, Being at Work, where I was proud enough to be an
That was
invited guest.
awesome.
That
That
was a
was
fun
so
episode.
fun. Yeah.
That was fun. And I guess I got to be part of this initiative that you've been doing for the last 2.5 years, where
Yep.
you have been interviewing various leaders and asking them about pivotal moments in their
Yep.
careers. And when you mentioned that to me when we were talking, we first met, I didn't know that was sort of the gist of what you were doing. And immediately a couple of moments came to mind. And that must happen when you have these
Yeah.
interviews.
It
Has,
does.
has this been a lot of fun for you?
Oh my gosh. It is the most fun I have ever had. I love it so much.
What are you learning?
Well, there are these themes as I curate these leadership stories that are so apparent. It's just been incredible to see that happen.
Are we going to tease them out of you? You're going to share them with us?
I want you
Do
to
we have
tease.
to? Do we have
I
to
want
buy
you
a
to.
book? What's
I
going on?
want you to tease them. Well, what do you think they are? If you
Well,
ask over 90 executives, tell me about a pivotal moment in your career that taught you a lot about yourself. What do you think might pop up?
well, you know what? Let me back it up and ask you this question. What? Oh, this is actually a couple questions tied around one little theme. What makes a moment pivotal? I mean, are you aware at the time the event's happening that it's a pivotal moment?
That's a good question. Yeah, probably not. I think it's upon reflection that the growth and the learning jump out at us. I think in the moment we feel like, oh shit, or something is happening here. Because in all the stories to date, there has been a significant emotional reaction. Something where we felt like, or nope, or oh my gosh. Yeah, I think about your story. In
Yeah.
your story, it was you were being asked to do something and you very much had a reaction of, that's not the right direction. Here's what we need to do. It took a lot of courage. It took a lot of, you definitely challenged the process. Yeah, it's upon reflection. Because I always, for me, experience has always been the best teacher, which is why, as a coach and a facilitator, I spend so much time encouraging people to reflect, take a step back,
Mm-hmm.
reflect on what were you feeling in that moment? What messages can you pull out of that experience? Which is why, like, being a curator of leadership stories has been so much fun for me over the last 2.5 years, because every time I listen to a story, I learn from it. I take
Yeah.
something away from it. We end up using these stories in our development experience as great lessons learned for others, because they're relatable kinds of things that we all get.
They are, and just for my listeners and I'll put the link to your podcast and actually that episode as well. Put it in the show notes. But we talked about a time when I was still in recruiting. I was in a room with some execs, and they were basically telling us we're going to outsource this big initiative, hire a ton of pharmaceutical salespeople in a short time, and who would I recommend as the external recruiting firm to help us do that? And I must have had my what did you say face on? Like, are you kidding? Who doesn't want to be a pharmaceutical salesperson? I mean, it was like
Yeah.
one of the great gigs you could get. Raised my hand, committed that me and my team could do it, and we did, and whatnot. But it was one of those moments at the time. I didn't make it wasn't like I don't know if it was a conscious decision, but like you said, it was tied to a visceral response. It was emotional because it immediately got a reaction out of me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was one of the other questions I was going to ask you about a pivotal moment. Does it have to be self initiated? Is it something that you do?
I don't think so. I think it's you and life working with you. Because doesn't life, in your experience, I don't know, John, for me, like I so believe that life is giving me what I need in order to grow and expand my influence.
Yeah. No, I mean you
So
do.
I
You
don't
have
think it
to
has to be self-initiated.
if you're it's all I kind of it's in the eye of the beholder. Sort of these events happen. Are they happening to you, or are they happening for you? I mean, it's one of the because I guess another thing I would think is pivotal moments are not always positive. They're not always like this great thing that happened to me.
Well, and I think in most of the stories I've heard over the last couple of years, yeah, there are significant challenges
Oh yeah.
that in the moment can feel really icky or uncomfortable.
Well, I even had a few, kick in the ass moments that were real pivotal. If, as a 25, 26-year old guy at the time, not realizing sort of, it's time to get serious, those types of things. There are pivotal moments that come, and luckily, even the ones that were hard pushed me in a direction that came out positive.
Yeah.
So I would think that if you're looking for themes, I'll take some guesses here, but I would think
Okay.
one would be that there was some risk involved. I would think it was it was pivotal because it was such a challenge that there was no guarantee of success. Maybe that's the same as risk. I might even be restating that. But I would also echo one thing you said, that it was more of a feeling and emotional, like I can do this,
Yeah.
and I have to do this.
Yeah, and for some reason that one always like even when you just said that, like I could feel that inside. The thing I had not expected when I started out on this journey to capture these stories was the level of intimacy that would come in these conversations. I mean, just the depth of impact to people. I mean, I have cried on so many
Mm.
shows, and the level of impact, that so you're right, like this, it's a deep feeling of learning something about yourself that I can do this.
Well,
Okay,
and
so
you
well
have your. Oh, I'm
you're
sorry. Go
guessing.
ahead.
I'm starting to get into the themes now.
Yeah.
See, I need
Okay.
to pull back and stay with your guesses. So you've got this kind of category of big risk involved, big challenge. There's also this category of just it being really personal, leading to this feeling of I can do this. Any other guesses? Any other big themes when you think about
Mm,
pivotal moments?
trying to think. What was it? Man.
Those could
Um.
those could be good starting points.
Man, I'm on the spot here.
I know.
I'm gonna
Look
have
at
to.
me turning around your show.
Damn it.
I'm interviewing you.
Yeah, but I got the edit button.
Oh, I mean, it is HR Hardball.
Right? Now, I would say, golly, it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy. Maybe that goes in the challenging thing again. I'm really floundering
Well,
with
let's
this.
let's talk about that because it's interesting that you keep coming back to that, and that is like there's these kind of like these umbrella themes, and then there's a lot of little sub themes, and that is one big umbrella. I have named that because I've taken these themes and I've written a book, John,
How about that? That's
and
awesome.
I've named that one of as I've synthesized and tried to categorize what I've heard. I've named that as being willing to step into the hard stuff.
Okay.
Because it for me, a pivotal moment, because you get to choose how to show up in that, don't you?
You do.
I mean, think about, let's just use your story. That could have easily turned into you just doing what the organization asked you to do.
Yeah.
It's a pivotal moment because you said, I don't think that's the best direction. It's a pivotal moment because you stepped into a tough situation because that was risky. Because they could have said, well, but John, we're asking you to do this. So yes, you will do it.
Right.
So that takes courage, doesn't it? I mean, that willingness to step in to the hard stuff. Because as you have said, it is risky. There's a lot of unknown. It's a challenge. It's uncomfortable.
And I think we talked about this on your show too. Now that I'm thinking back on this, I don't know. I I don't know if I'd do it as readily if I didn't feel like I was in a safe place. You
Yeah.
know, I had
Right.
I had a manager who, even if he didn't agree with me, I felt like he would support me, and um, that's important. You have to feel like, okay, there's some risk involved, but I mean, let's be honest, it's not life threatening, but it was one of those things that I knew
Right.
this is it's going to be hard, but they're going to at least give me a chance to explain myself.
Yeah. Well, what a good point. So I think for leaders, that you just bring up a really important reminder is creating an environment where it's safe to step into the hard stuff. And that's exactly what your leader did for you in that scenario, because you had such a good relationship, trusting, credibility with him. It felt comfortable for you to step out in courage. But you had said like you didn't have that relationship with other leaders in the room.
No, I didn't. I did
And I
not.
wonder if he hadn't have been there, would you
Ooh.
have done that? I mean, that was something I know you thought of since then.
I
That's
might
that
have.
safety.
I might have only because I'm one of those people that can't help himself. If I
Yeah.
have something that, you have something that's just wants to jump out of your mouth so bad, yeah, I might have said it anyway. I don't know if maybe the reaction would have been a little bit different because he carried a little respect in the room as well. But I probably would have said it. I just don't know if
Yeah.
the result would have been as good.
Right. There was psychological safety in the room. So you were willing to step into the hard stuff. So I think I mean, that could be a whole show in itself, couldn't it? Is
Oh,
how
it
to
could.
create that kind of an environment. And then what if there's not psychological safety? Yeah, that's a lot riskier, isn't it? There was an early guest, Patty Hatter, who's out in California, and she talked about like a huge leap that she took early in her career. And she adopted this attitude of what is the worst that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. That's something that has come up over and over in this theme of being willing to step into the hard stuff. Is it also takes, it takes this personality that recognizes that, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah,
When I really think about what's the worst that could happen, I'm going to be all right here, regardless of if this doesn't work or it works, I'm going to be fine.
I think you're right. A lot of people, myself, I can tell you, I have a very strong faith, and I think that things are happening because they're supposed to happen, and so things could get bad, but I'm going to be all right.
Yeah. Yeah, so psychological safety, that attitude of I'm going to be okay regardless. What's the worst that could happen? I mean, those are the ingredients to being willing to step into the hard stuff. And that's where growth happens, isn't it? I mean, that's where we see big moves, and I so appreciate that. Yeah, that's one of the biggest themes that has come out of these conversations, is being willing to step into the hard stuff.
And I know when we talked, you have your own pivotal moments you've talked about too that were pretty easy to recall. And again, I think it was, if I remember right, it took some stones to do what you did. I mean, you stepped up and said things in a meeting that was, I think it was way out of your salary grade at the time, but you earned some respect
Yeah.
out of that encounter.
Yeah, I found myself at 23 years old facilitating to 15 European business heads. I was in Manchester, England, facilitating a change management program. I had no idea what I was doing. But my boss at the time, he said, I believe in you, and I think this is a great opportunity for you to build relationships. And I was petrified, and it probably wasn't my best performance, but it did really give me an opportunity to get to know leaders I never would have. And a few months after that facilitation experience, one of the leaders who was leading a business in the UK actually came to lead the business that I was in. And so it was quite fortuitous that I had gotten to work with him, because we already had an established relationship because of that. And so it set me apart a bit from some of my peers when he came into our business. So you never know, right,
You,
what those moments are going to lead to.
Well, and sometimes they're scary because you just did something. You're like, oh God, what did I step into here? there's working without a net, and we're talking about the risk involved, and it's unsettling. And then later, when you become an old man like me, and you're telling your sons, hey, here's some of the things that I learned, and that I can pinpoint where I was sitting, what I felt at the moment, all that kind of stuff, because it becomes so visceral. And but it was scary at the time. Now I look back at it and laugh and all that, but there was some fear involved.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's okay. And so doing it afraid is an important concept. One of my all time favorite leadership stories is my daughter at 8 years old. She was quite the performer. I wonder where she gets that, her
I
gregarious
couldn't imagine.
personality, you know,
Couldn't imagine.
but always singing and making up songs. And so there was a theater class that was 8 weeks long. And I heard dad and I decided like, that's going to be great for this kid. So we got her into this program. And at the beginning of the program, all of them were given a poem that they were to rehearse and practice over the course of the program. And then they were going to perform them in front of an audience at the end of the process. So Mason was given a Shel Silverstein poem called Our Orchestra, O-U-R Orchestra, because in the poem, she is all of these different instruments. So there was one point where she beats her belly as if it's her drum. And there's another point where she would play her nose as if it were her flute. And so it was really fun, really, really cute poem. By the end of the 8 weeks, we all had it down pat.
Right.
Because she practiced perpetually. And it was really exciting to see this little budding performer, come to life. So we couldn't wait for performance day. And when performance day finally came, there I was on the front row with my video camera and couldn't wait to see this kid in action. And she got really awful stage fright. And I hadn't predicted that at all because she was so outgoing and always performing. And we'd go to the to get the oil changed, and she was the kid like in the waiting room, like bouncing around, dancing and talking to everyone. And so I never expected that she would have stage fright. But when she got up in front of that audience that day, she was pale as a ghost and had big red splotches all over her.
God bless her.
And was trembling. I mean, just full on. And so I thought, oh my gosh, she's going to run off the stage. She's going to dig her head into my hip and she's going to sob. That's how this is going to go. So I actually put my video camera down, expecting that to happen.
Good idea, Mom.
But that's not what happened.
No?
She did it. All of a sudden, she just
got it?
She just started going. And it was really choppy and shaky, and she beat her drum, and it was really pretty bad.
Aw.
But at the end of that performance, what do you think the audience did?
Oh, they probably gave her a stand up. Yeah, I'm sure. Absolutely.
Well, and such a great story because nobody was clapping because it was a great performance. We were cheering her on because we recognized that she was petrified and she did it anyways.
Yeah.
And so don't we love that when people will
do.
step up and try and with their, because you could tell like, gosh, this kid wants to do this so bad. And because the other takeaway for me in that story is because she had practiced so much, she had devoted it to memory. So it was in there. So even in her complete fear and anxiety, she was able to perform. She was able to do something.
That's a great story.
Isn't that a great story?
Yeah, because we start to, everybody loves an underdog. And when you see somebody that's in front of you overcoming a fear or overcoming an obstacle, it is, especially when, it's your kid, you must have just been busting. That's really great.
Yeah. So it reinforces that being willing to step out in faith, that we intuitively want to cheer you on.
Mm-hmm.
Like the people are rooting for you. Life is rooting for you. Others are rooting for you. You've got the support system.
Man, do you think your employee, that's great. If you're a manager or if you're in human resources and you're listening to this, and I know I have a lot of business people that listen to this that aren't really in human resources, but do your employees feel that way?
Yeah, exactly. Do they know that you're cheering them on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it an environment in which they're cheered on when they step out in fear? Yeah, because think about like the traditional performance review process. It's not built to support that struggling and failing and messing up. And you're not cheered on when you perform at a really low level. I mean, her performance was awful, but she did it. You know,
it's funny you mentioned the performance review process, and it's kind of funny that the new the new way of doing these things, and I'm guilty myself, is the employee will fill out their review first and then send
Yeah.
it to the manager. And
Yeah.
so it becomes a process of look at all I did, and
I
then the
know.
manager's job is to start chipping away at that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's really not in all cases. Sometimes you might go, wow, you really didn't give yourself credit for some things. But yeah, then you end up just trying to chop, 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 chop.
Yeah.
That's not a real encouraging process.
No, I think the value there is alignment, right? Let's get aligned on
Yeah.
what you're doing and your perception of what you're doing. And yeah, but let's not call that a performance evaluation. Let's call it an alignment evaluation. Well,
That's
that could be a whole other podcast episode too, couldn't it?
Yep. Note to self. I know you're taking notes, so you're saying another episode. Do
I
this.
am. Yep. Because I love this. I love your show, John. This is really fun.
Oh, thank you.
So let's talk about theme number 2. So
Yes.
you got to be willing to step into the hard stuff. You alluded to this in your story, where remember how you talked about it was safer for you because your boss was there.
Mm-hmm.
A theme that comes out over and over in these pivotal moments is the power of relationship.
Hmm.
And we know, I mean, we are both relationship people, but leveraging those relationships, relying on those relationships. So some of the things that I've heard over the last couple of years and just been reminded of is that leaders don't go it alone, that we need each other. We get strength from each other. And the more that we lean into and leverage those relationships, the stronger we are.
Hmm.
And all of that, you may be listening to that and think, well, duh. But are we really taking the time to leverage the relationship? Slow it down. Say, how are you? How are you? What's going on? Let's connect. Let's talk.
Yeah.
Like that's the stuff that life is made of. I think we are here to be in relationship, and we grow and we learn through all of those relationships that we have. So using them. So in the pivotal moment, like I got strength from the relationships. I got encouragement from the relationships. I was cheered on to keep going. I was lifted up.
That's great, because that means that, and I think if you're doing leadership coaching, and I know that's what you do, most people in their background can pick out more managers that weren't great than were, because you remember, and a lot of times you don't even know it. Maybe your first manager out of the block is great, and then you realize that the next job you're like, oh man, I should have embraced that, because people are, we're different. A lot of people who are in leadership positions nowadays don't have the benefit of coaching or development. They were just performers.
They were just performers. But something, like I would say, if there are people listening who are early in career and have a cruddy manager, I think that I've got a perspective on cruddy managers. I don't really think there's any such thing. And I know that may seem strange coming from like a leadership development facilitator, but I have such a belief that everyone wants to add value. There is no one that wants to be a cruddy manager. Like no one is setting out to show up and hinder someone's success. They just really don't know what to do. They've never been equipped. Maybe they've never been modeled good leadership. I think about my first manager, and I remember like going to lunch with some of my peers at the time, and we would just dog our managers,
Yep.
And I think now about, wow, just how much time and energy I wasted. And what if I had leaned in and asked her some questions and really tried to understand her, upon reflection, like looking back and having reported to her for just a bit, I think she was lonely. I think she was threatened by,
Really?
I came in with a ton of gusto and dynamism. And I remember one time, the company I worked for, I had a dotted line to somebody in the UK. And on my first trip, so I'd been there maybe like a month, and I had my first trip to the UK. And so naturally, like me being an explorer and an adventurer, I'm thinking like, well, heck, I'm going early and I'm going to spend some time in London and just see some things. And I remember telling her that, and that's not what we do. Like we fly in, we work, and we fly out. And I'm like, well, why? Like, why
Right.
not? Why not explore while you're there? I mean, I was so naive. I didn't get, she was trying to explain, like, this is our travel policy or something. But um, yeah. And I think that I wish I would have asked her to lunch. I wish I would have asked her to go for a walk and just asked her about her life and peered in a little bit instead of I made a ton of assumptions about how she showed up and why she showed up that were incorrect. So I would encourage anyone to just think about how you can influence him or her um,
Mhm.
positively, leading up, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's again, what kind of that takes courage in itself, to lead up.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Well, and I didn't do it well then. That was I didn't have that insight at all at that time. But looking back now, well, and now because, and you, I mean, what do you think of that sentiment that all of these leaders, we label like bad leader. What is that? I mean, I think everyone has strengths. Everyone is a work in progress. So, any aspect of anyone's leadership you could point to and say they're not strong in that area. I don't like the phrasing like bad manager or bad leader. I don't know.
well, I can tell you, and having listened to the way you described that particular scenario, I had a few people I reported to that I did not care for at all.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking about it now, I think it was on a personal level. There was something on a personal level that maybe maybe they were threatened, maybe they didn't like me, maybe it's just something about me that I wasn't getting the best of them.
Hmm.
I think that was part of it, and I know in at least one case,
Getting the best of them.
I was not at that moment. I was not either brave enough or willing to put in the effort to manage it up.
I love that. I wasn't getting the best of them. And I think we could turn that around. What a great question for leaders to ask themselves. Are your team members getting the best of you? I mean, I think about last night, my family, there was a moment in our kitchen that was so good. And because I've been traveling a lot, I've been working a lot in the evenings, and I've been feeling like, okay, I'm not being a great mom. I'm not leading well here. And so I've been really intentional about our evenings being present and asking a lot of questions of the kids and engaging them. And we had that moment last night where we were all in the kitchen and we were laughing and we were connecting and we were talking about our days, and they were getting the best of me.
Yeah,
Man, that feels good, doesn't it?
it does.
And I can think about so many times when they aren't. And same with my team. So what a great question to ask. I mean, you noted it from the perspective of thinking up, but I think it's a good way to think for each leader to think about the people that they're leading.
Yeah, because it's tough. I mean, a lot of times you can't pick your leader. Most times you can't pick your leader. That's one of the lessons that, you share with your kids growing up is, hey, I know you don't like them, but guess what? Learning how to make that relationship still work and be productive is a big lesson in itself.
Yeah, it is. That's gonna be a daily dose of leadership, John. That's so
Yes.
good.
And do you
Hmm.
want to tell my listeners real quick what your daily dose is?
So, in addition to these leadership stories I've been curating over the last 2.5 years, last April, I decided right at the beginning of COVID, like, man, we need some encouragement. And I love to journal and start my day with positivity. And so I started writing things down. And the producer of our podcast said, why don't you share those in a daily dose of encouragement? So they started in that regard and they've evolved. I've done one every single day, every single weekday since April of 2020. So,
Wow.
gosh, over what, 500 or so now, I guess.
Goodness.
Well, and they're just 2 to 3 minute snippets. I use a ton of stories for my own example. I'm always listening for things like you just shared, John, and
Yeah.
then I can share them there. And I will tell you, it is so life giving for me to sit down, write those, think about, process, reflect on my own experiences, and then turn those into little podcast snippets. I get a ton of energy from that.
That's great. And I'll put the link to that. Well, you post those on LinkedIn.
Yeah, they're actually in the Being at Work feed. So
Oh, okay.
they
Okay.
show up every day in the Being at Work feed, and then every Thursday a longer show with an executive
And
talking about a pivotal moment.
how long has the podcast been going now? The Being at
Yeah,
Work.
so July of 2019.
Okay.
Yeah,
So most podcasts they say don't make it a year because people just
I
lose
know.
interest or content or whatever.
I love
So
it.
you did that. You got that part. Cross that
Yeah,
part.
yeah. And as things evolve and shift, it's the consistency has always been the tell me about a pivotal moment. The audience has shifted a little bit. We started with a focus on CEOs and then broadened it a bit to executives. And now over the last few months, it's when you were a part of that shift, we've really shifted to heads of HR and people and talent and that is purposeful. That's my tribe. That's
Yeah.
the network that I've been engaged in throughout my career. And it is such a giving group that is so focused on the development and growth of others. I feel so fortunate to give those leaders a space to share a story about their growth
Mm.
and to take a step back and think about a time in their journey that really stood out to them. It's really fun.
Well, what a time to be in HR too. I mean,
Whew.
this boy, oh boy. It's every time you think, okay, well, that was our lesson, another one, and now we've
I
got like
know.
mandates and things like that we're going to be dealing with. It's a constant,
Yeah.
perpetual learning.
Yeah. Well, so it's a pivotal moment.
It
And so
is.
let's talk about the last theme, right? So
Okay.
we've talked about being willing to step into the hard stuff,
Mm-hmm.
leveraging your relationships. And the third theme is going bigger picture. And
Okay.
here's what I mean by that. As I listen to these almost 100 stories now over the last 2.5 years, you earlier, John, you talked about how you go to your faith. So call it faith, call it mission, vision, purpose, values, guiding principles.
Okay.
In most of the stories, there has been a bigger why that encouraged people to step out, to take courage,
Mm.
to take the leap, to do something. There was a bigger purpose. There was a bigger draw.
So,
And
like, give me an example, like one that jumps to mind.
okay, I'll share the story of. Oh, I've got so many. Now they're all getting jumbled in my head. Jeff Mittman is the CEO of Bosma Enterprises.
Okay.
And his pivotal moment was in 2005. So he, as the CEO of Bosma offers resources to the visually impaired. And it's a really personal mission for Jeff because he himself is blind. And that happened in 2005 when he was in Afghanistan and was literally blown up
Oh
by a
gosh.
roadside bomb. And so he was in intensive therapy and even in a coma for a few months, but intensive therapy for 5 months. And when he finally came to, he realized, I mean, and he's, has a long road ahead of him, but he lost his sight, was a big challenge. And so he realized in that moment, like, I have a choice, right? I have a choice here. And he was very much driven by his sense of purpose, his sense of this is my life. I am alive and I get to choose. So a bigger picture vision drove him in that moment.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. His family needing to and wanting and the desire to serve them and provide for them.
I mean that's courage. That's a different level. That's awesome.
Well, and I often talk about vision too as that thing that pulls you. Like, I don't know, John, what your process is, but my husband and I have a process every January. We sit down and we look at our 10-year vision. When we got married, we actually went through a process of creating a 10-year vision together.
Oh man.
And so now every year we reflect on that and we take a step back and we go out 10 years and we make updates and evolve it as we always do. But then it gives us something to say, okay, what am I going to 2022, like given my long-term vision, our long-term vision that we're co-creating, what am I going to do this year? So it pulls me, rather than reacting to what pops up, it gives me something to filter decisions through. It gives me something to be really proactive about. And so that's where in these pivotal moments, if I've got a bigger picture to go to, something critical pops up, I can say like, what is it that we're co-creating together, and how can that help me decide in this moment what to do?
That's great. So you kind of have your map that if it's not taking you down that path, then it's really not worth getting yourself tied into it.
Right. And there's a big difference between living by default and just reacting to whatever's happening and living by design. Having that map, that bigger picture focus, you're creating it as you go.
You know what? I'm afraid that, and I can speak personally, I bet there's a lot more of default than there is by plan. I
No
think
doubt
that, a
there
lot of
is.
us just kind of take it as it comes, and that's man. I need to get my
Yeah, and we
bigger
miss
vision.
out then on this creative ability that we were given. Human beings are the only animals that have the ability to think about the future. I mean, what a gift that is,
Yeah.
that we get to project and imagine and just stake a claim. I mean, for me, naming a vision, all it is naming what the future holds. And of course it's going to be fuzzy, right? Because it's like, I think of it as kind of as sitting on the edge of the cliff and looking out onto the horizon. The further you look, the fuzzier it gets, but it's still out there somewhere. And I still get to imagine the possibilities of what it looks like.
Man.
Yeah, I mean, think about 10 years, like we can name how old we will be. We can think about the people in our lives. My kids will be 30 years old. I'll have a 30-year-old in
Yeah, I will
10
too.
years.
I will too.
I'll have a 24-year-old and a 22-year-old.
Oh man.
But what's so cool about that is, okay, so what do I want to start doing now? What do I need to be intentional about today to shape those relationships so that when they are adults, we'll have a collaborative, engaging, fun relationship, you know?
That's
I
been one of the great things. I hate whenever it comes out, it sounds bad. Not great things about COVID. One of the positive offshoots of this, with the way things worked, is we, began having dinner every day with our boys again.
Yeah.
Spent so much more time with them because where are you going to go? And and some of those habits have still maintained, even though we're definitely closer back to normal than a lot here in Texas. But it was that's been a really neat development for my wife and I.
Oh, most definitely, to reconnect.
Yeah.
Well, and it goes back to what I was saying a minute ago about the kitchen. You know, being intentional about connective, present moments with my kids set me up for that long-term vision that I have for my relationships with them, right? So the more I think about what those relationships look like, it drives decisions in the present moment. So again, the difference between living by default and living by design.
That's awesome. That's an
Yeah.
awesome tip.
So go big picture. That was the third big theme. Be driven by something bigger than you. Whatever that is for you.
So, I know that you're still talking to leaders. You're still doing this process. I mean, are
Yeah.
you going to have another book?
Oh, I'm sure there will be more
Right? There's
books.
got to
Yeah. Being at Work Part 2.
be, right? So it's not-
Well, we have to get the first book published first. Are you an author? Have you written a book?
Man, I am an author. I'm a co-contributor to one book. I've not written my own book, and it's probably the biggest self. I want to just self-flagellate myself for not having done it. Just beat myself to death because I've got a book in me. I mean, I've got like
Of
400
course you do.
blog pieces out there, and I've got all these neat ideas. I don't have the discipline. That's been my
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's a process. Well, and so I have a manuscript And I keep evolving it. At some point, I think it's because I continue to have stories that I want to include. So I need to just draw a line in the sand and say, okay, I'm done and I'm going to publish it.
Yeah.
That's yeah. My goal is by end of year to do that.
Well, that's awesome. That would be an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. It's great. It's great story. It's great research. I mean, it's almost 100 executives talking about a pivotal moment in their career. So it's interesting to see the themes that emerged.
Well, and you could just, I mean, I can imagine, I'm going to read it. So you're going through these various stories, and I can't imagine the aha moments you're going to capture because they're going to resonate. Almost all of them are going to resonate.
Yeah. You know, there's in our last few minutes, there's a fourth theme. I'm curious to get your thought that it's not in the original manuscript, but as I've reflected, and part of it is definitely in the like being willing to step out, but there's a nuance to it. And I've named this fourth theme, the normalcy, recognize the normalcy of self-doubt. Because listen to how interesting this is. So these are, you know, the leaders that I'm talking to are tenured, you know, executives at Crate and Barrel, Facebook, Salesforce. I mean, I've had some really high powered leaders. John Whitaker on the show.
Damn right.
But you know the question. So here's what happens at the end. And I bet you get this too. And I wonder if you've noticed this. So we record and we have a conversation about their story. And then I stop record. The first question that they ask me.
How did I do?
Yes. Was that okay? Was that okay?
Oh my gosh.
And
That's so funny. That's exactly what happened.
Do you get that too?
Yes.
Yeah. Wanting to be affirmed that I did okay.
That's funny. Yeah, and these people are like all-stars.
Right. Yeah. So just that self-doubt, you know, and the importance of affirmation, really.
Wow.
Someone saying like, yeah, you're good. So you know what I do? You may remember this. Do you remember what I did as soon as I stopped record? Do you remember what I did when you were on my show?
I think you said, great job. That was awesome, or something like that.
And I clapped.
You clap.
I always clap, even before they ask the question, to just affirm.
You used your trick on me. It worked.
Well, it was, but here's the thing. They're always great. It's your story. I mean, that's the thing about a show like mine, you know, asking someone to just tell a story about their life. Like, how can you mess that up?
You'd be surprised. I mean,
yeah, they're really. I mean, I've been really blessed because I've had people ask me that question, like, "What do you do with shows that aren't good? Like, have you ever tanked a show?" Or, no. Well, and I do probably like you. I always do some sort of intro or connection, right? So I'm not just showing up blind. Like I know them and their story a bit, and
it definitely helps because you have a rapport, and you're just, you know, you're built to have conversations with. You're so open and engaging. And you know what you just said about the comfortable with the self-doubt. I think what resonated with me when you said that was to continue to remind my children of that. Because, you know, my 20-year-old, you obviously have a 20-year-old, he's at that point where guess what? He doesn't know what he wants to do.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it's easy not to remember when we were that age. I mean, I was an idiot for a long time. I had no idea what I was going to do. You know, got my college degree. I don't know what I'm going to do. Got my first job, bounced around. I mean, at 26 years old, I was back living with my aunt painting houses for a year. That's how, you know, I had screwed things up. And there's always chance. There's always a chance for redemption, you know. And I look back at those times really fondly. But at the time, they sucked.
Absolutely.
You know?
But I think that you're right, like reminding them that that's so normal to feel that way.
Yeah.
And when do you ever really know what you're doing? Do you know?
A great point.
When do you ever really know?
You know, it's my wife and I've had this conversation so many times. I did a lot of research on imposter syndrome, and I think that's a fascinating subject. And how many more times, and for women especially, they will have this doubt that unless they check every box, they can't apply for a position that
Yeah.
they see. And a man will throw his resume in there
Yep.
if just
Had
because
him.
yeah,
Yep.
I'll interview well. They'll love me, that kind of deal.
Yeah.
And it's you kind of get in that mindset. And now, I look at her now. She's an entrepreneur, and she's got business partners, and they're launching this digital therapeutic. And I don't even understand it, but I see this badass executive
Mm.
who, being an entrepreneur in and of itself is hard enough. But I mean, to do what they're doing, and she's just committed and in there, and it's the
That's so
scariest thing in the
great.
world. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. It's inspiring to
It's
me.
so great. I
Yeah.
bet it is. Yeah. Good for her. And keep cheering her on. No doubt that means a lot for her.
Yeah,
Because that's
wow.
it, right? Like that's with our kids, I think. Because just like at the end of those shows, I mean, when I clap and I say great job, like that affirmation is really, it's really an important thing for everyone. I don't think there's anyone who would ever say I've been encouraged too much or I've been lifted up too much. I don't think there's any such thing.
It's the sad thing is there are people out there, their children or employees, however, if it's your work or personal life, that aren't getting it. They're not
Yeah.
getting any,
Yeah.
and the impact you can have just by giving them a little bit.
I know.
It is a powerful, powerful thing.
It is. Yeah. And it can be such a simple, hey, I see you. I see what
Yeah,
you're doing. I see the effort.
yeah.
I see the work. Yeah, these aren't big monumental choices that take a ton of time or effort. They're simple, simple things.
So, how about final thoughts? Do you have any final thoughts you want to share, or advice, or any big nuggets you want to leave us with? A tease?
Mm. Yeah, I just always encourage everyone to just trust life. Life is working with you, no doubt. You know, we get so control oriented and rigid and try to force things. And I don't think we need to. I think life knows
It's going to be
what we
okay.
need to trust it. It's going to be
That's
okay.
It's going to be okay. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of one of those things we try. Got to remind yourself of that occasionally, but especially for those around you when you see that they're really and they've gotten themselves twisted up
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just ugh.
There's a song that I listened to this morning. I love so much. It's called "It Is Well." It's a Christian song. I don't know who sings it, but yeah, if you're just looking for a reminder that it's all okay, like check out "It Is Well." It just that's the chorus.
It
Like
as well.
it is well.
I'll check that out for sure.
It's all okay. It's a good one. I was getting in the shower this morning and I could just feel my brain was on overload at everything I had to do, and I was starting to feel like, oh shit, there's no way, and things are falling through the crack, and I'm an awful person, and it was spiraling really quickly. And so I'm like, I gotta get in my zone, my "it is well" zone.
That's
So I
awesome.
put that song on. But that's the key. I think just paying attention. We can control that negative spiral, but you got to catch it before you have spiraled is the key.
Yeah, you do, and you got that need. That's why you keep some people around you that got your back and will
You
remind
got
you
it.
too, right?
Right. Surround yourself with the right people.
Well,
Yep.
you're one of my people now. You're one
You
of the
are one
people
of
I'm
my
going to go
people.
for encouragement. That is, I love this. This is great, and I hope we get a chance to talk a
Yeah.
lot more.
Yeah. Thanks for what you're doing. Thanks for providing a forum. I
Well,
know
thank
that
you.
you love talking about controversial kinds of things. I was telling my family last night that I was going to be on HR Hardball, but I felt like I was more of an HR softball kind of a person.
Well, it's funny because I people say, oh, how could a show about HR be interesting? I said, well, because I don't really talk to HR people all the time. I
No.
talk to interesting people about interesting things,
Yeah. Well, and
and
even HR, like I don't even call myself an HR person, right? It's
yeah,
talent, it's people, it's the profession has so evolved. Over you and I talked about this about the time we've been in it, and it's there's no difference for me between business leadership and HR leadership, and I'm so glad that that's shifting. That we are business leaders managing the most important part of the business,
yeah, we are.
creating experiences, right, that move the business forward.
Well, that never became more clear than the last 18 months. And
Yep.
I think that if HR, if you're in your organization and you're an HR performer and you've managed to get through these 18 months, you're a rock star because it
Yeah.
has not been easy. And It's going to continue to be difficult, but these are, like you mentioned earlier, these are pivotal moments. We are doing them right now.
Yeah. We have to up our game. Yeah. So I'll just do a quick plug for Next Gen Talent. So, 3.5 years ago, I literally Googled developing business skills for HR leaders, and there was nothing.
Really?
Yeah. There was Sherm and a couple of other, resources, but nothing about really building business skills, marketing, selling skills, business acumen, technology. So it was a gap. So I collaborated with an amazing partner, Kelly Lavin, who's the chief people officer at JobVite, and she and I developed and built and executed on a program called Next Gen Talent that's now going into its third year. And so we've really grown and had a lot of great successes. It's a 2-year development program focused specifically on building business skills.
That's
So
awesome.
we focus a lot on like the knowing your business. You got to know your business, like business first, business lens. And so we really don't talk much about HR. We talk about business disciplines. So the first year, every month is a different business discipline. So we start with marketing and sales. We have 2 months on finance and data analytics,
I was going to ask if
business.
that
It's
was
a
a big
lot.
one.
Yeah. 2 months on technology as well. Do a lot around influence and presentation and how you're showing up and selling ideas. We do a CHRO panel that you're going to be a part of in November.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, where we provide strategy and focus, because then that's at the end of year 1, because then year 2 is really challenging them to think like a CHRO. So we provide some business challenges for them to work on, applying those skills that they learned in year 1.
That's awesome.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, it is.
So if there's any emerging leaders that are interested in learning more about Next Gen Talent, ngtalent.com is the website.
Next Gen Talent. No, I'm going to get on there again today and check out the curriculum and all that, because I've got good people that work for me too, and really, it's not so much a point of getting to the table, that old cliche phrase. It's when you get there, can you talk like they talk?
Absolutely.
So that's
Yes.
right.
And that's it. Yeah, for so many years, I would get so frustrated when HR leaders would say things like, well, they just don't get HR. Well, you can't expect them to. They're focused on their business. You lean into their business and come alongside them. I mean, you nailed it.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised how much they really do care about HR once you explain to them. I'm not talking about benefits or policies.
Right. I'm talking about getting the best out of your people.
That's right. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I very early in my career gravitated to leadership development because I was doing all these employee relations issues. And I realized that if these leaders would just actually lead, these issues would go away. So why aren't we equipping leaders to lead effectively? Like say they were these sales and branch leaders that had no idea what to do. They'd been promoted. They were good salespeople and they'd never led before. So let's equip them to lead rather than reacting to these issues that are popping up. Let's proactively develop them. So that's where my passion came from.
Well, that's awesome. You've done some great stuff, and it sounds like you're going to continue to do some great stuff, and I'm glad to be a part of it in a small way.
Well, I'm just following life's lead, John, and I'm just showing up with a lot of gusto and enthusiasm. Yeah, I love life, and I feel so grateful for the work I get to do and the people I get to do it with. I'm very, very fortunate.
When our youngest was a little guy, he had this little phrase he would run and go, "I'm showing the show." That was his little. And so when you just said that, I just started to go back. Showing the show.
I love that.
Yeah.
My stepson Alex, when he was 6 years old, he said to me, we were driving and I was singing or something, and he's like, "Andrea, you always just show up and are ready to play." I'm like,
that's awesome.
Yes, I
am. Yes,
Yeah.
I am.
Thank you for just naming my mantra. I'm showing up and ready to play. So here we go.
That's a great way to end it right there. That's perfect.
Thank you, John.
I want to thank you again. All right. And I will let you know when this is going to be published, and we'll schedule another time to talk here soon. But thank you so much for what you shared here today.
Yeah. Hey, can I just real quickly while I have you?
Yeah.
Do you have the November 12th on your calendar? Make sure that you do. I added you to that meeting notice, I'm pretty sure.
November 12th. Let's see.
Because last week with the group, we were just preparing for Q4, and I was talking about you. I was sharing our panelists. November the 12th, it's from 8 to 10.
Where's my? Oh, there it is. 12th. No, I do not have it on here.
Well, here, let me forward it to you. Does that still work for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just looking at it, and I can still do it, so we're
Okay,
good.
good. Yeah, it is. It's you, the CHRO at Car Global. They're a car auction company.
Mm-hmm.
The chief HR officer at Mission Critical Services. And there's one other that's escaping me right now. So we've got a good mix.
Good.
Yeah. I just forwarded it to you.
Well, I'll be ready with snappy anecdotes and witty repartee.
I know you will. All right. Have a great weekend.
You do the same, Andrea. Hey, and by the way, you did great.
How did I do? No,
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's clap for each other. This was
Yeah.
fun. This was
That
a
was
lot of
great.
fun. Thank
That
you
was
so
great.
much for making it so easy.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Have a
Bye,
great
my
weekend.
friend.
Bye-bye.